so welcome everyone, and hello to everyone joining us online as well. Today it's going to be a little bit different from what I normally do with you. Normally we talk about a really specific topic, but today we'll be talking about Financial Literacy Month, which is a, as Lynn was saying, a federal government initiative. So let's get the slides up and get going. So. And then I go over here.
Where's Waldo?
Yeah, okay. All right, just a little test here. Okay, there we go. So I hope you can all see that full screen. So this is the 15th anniversary of the FCAC's Financial Literacy Month, which is November of every year. So let's get going. Okay, first a little disclaimer. Obviously, I can't comment on your individual financial situation. For that, you should contact your own professional. But I'm here to give you as much information as I can. There'll be lots of links to websites that you can look at your leisure. So today, I always like to do a bit of in the news, like what's happening in the financial news. We usually do that in our presentations. The topic, the theme this year for Financial Literacy Month is Talk Money. Basically, it's trying to get people to get over the stigma of discussing money matters with friends or colleagues or family, and just get everyone sharing information. So that's the theme. There are lots of tools on various government and other websites such as securities commissions. I've also put in lots of slides to journals and newspapers and things that I like to consult. And because I always have too many slides, I always do an appendix at the end where I stuff in a bunch of stuff that we're just not going to be able to have time to get through today. So in the news, first of all, the Bank of Canada interest rate, after its latest decrease in October, is now at 2.25%. Note, this is the Bank of Canada rate. It's not the rate that any of us are going to get for a loan at the bank. This is the rate at which the Bank of Canada lends to the big banks. But just to give some perspective, we're all aware interest rates kind of took a skyrocketing a bit after the pandemic. So that rate is down from a high of 5% in 2023, and it's been done nothing but drop since then. The next setting of the interest rate by the Bank of Canada is in early December. So more spectacular news. If you've been following this saga about the capital gains inclusion rate, there was a proposal to increase that inclusion rate on your tax return to 2/3 instead of a half. And that was for gains of over $250,000. That was supposed to have gone into effect about 6 months ago, and it has been cancelled by the current government. So I've put a link here to the Prime Minister's office's website that you can read the official cancelling of it. TFSA updates. If you've been to any of my presentations before, you know that I love TFSAs and I like to tell everyone about them and encourage them. So we have had word that the annual contribution limit for 2026, which comes into effect on January 1st, will be $7,000 like it has been for the last 2 years. And so as of Jan 1, we are all allowed to put an extra $7,000 into our TFSA. That brings the accumulated limit to $109,000, which is starting to get to be some really interesting amounts. Oops, okay, I've got these out of order. So this is maybe a little bit of old news, but maybe we've already forgotten. In 2023, the Quebec government actually gave us a tax decrease on the first 2 levels of tax brackets. So they dropped from 15 to 19 and from 20 to 19. So now look at that. The federal government is following suit. So starting this year, The effective rate for 2025 on the first tax bracket will be 14.5%, and then starting in 2026, that will drop to 14%. So they're basically following Quebec's lead in that, at least on the first tax bracket. So that's a little bit of tax saving for everyone. And here are some websites that you can have a look at if you want more information on that. So Financial Literacy Month, as I was saying, it's talk about money, break the taboo. I think a lot of us will agree that it's often uncomfortable to talk about money with, sometimes even with our partner or spouse or children or our parents, friends, certainly colleagues. So because there's such a hunger for financial information, what the FCAC is encouraging is that we do break that taboo and talk about what we've learned, or ask questions, ask in our entourage around us, how did you manage your mortgage renewal, or how did you manage when you got that loan for your car, and compare and share information. So of course there are lots and lots of online tools. Everything today is online, but there are lots and lots of them. And I'll provide links to many of them during today. And here's some more, another website. So basically the kind of building blocks, or the sectors that normally we look at when we're talking about resources and tools. First of all, managing your money. This is a wide topic, obviously. So there's budgeting, or knowing how much income you have coming in versus what you have in expenses going out. How do you manage your banking? How do you, for instance, try to minimize your banking fees, maximize the services that you get? And the big one is, knowing that at different stages in life, there are different things that we prioritize in our financial lives. So some questions to ask there. Again, here are some websites for further information. Housing is a big topic these days. So, we talk about this a little bit when we do our tax presentations in the spring. There are credits and other helpful things that have been put in place by governments to help with the housing. Financial tools and calculators, if you like kind of getting online and poking around and checking out how do I calculate this and how do I calculate that, there are lots and lots of places to do that. There's even a tool on the FCAC site for comparing different banks and their services. There's some information on your credit score and how to get you can get a free credit, I think it's a credit score document. I think you can order it at least once a year for free from the normal credit companies. And of course, budgeting is the big one. There are tons and tons of tools, and perhaps some of you are already using some of the apps that go on your phone for tracking your expenses. There are lots of those as well. So some of the suggestions that are coming from the FCAC, for instance, are like do one thing this month that concerns your financial literacy, and it doesn't need to be a big thing. You could, for instance, check your credit score. When was the last time you checked your credit score? You could have a closer look at that budget. Look at the last 3 months of your expenses and see how that lines up with what your income over that time has been. You can take a class. There's quite an interesting course on the McGill website, which is free and online. I think it's 6 episodes. I did it a few years ago just to see what it was like, and basically it's different professors from different areas in the business school, and they're talking about different topics. So you can go through each little episode course, and at the end you get a little certificate that you did the course. But it's quite high level, but it's a good overview of some of the topics in finance. Review your will, particularly if you've had a major change happen in your life, like a marriage or a separation, the birth of a child, the death of someone close, or losing a job, starting a job, buying a home, selling a home. All those things are life events that can impact our finances. use some of the online free tools. Have a look at some of the links that I'm providing today, or talk to your friends and your entourage. Ask them what they're using on their phone. What do they like for tracking their expenses or for looking at a budget on their phone? And look up one topic online. Like say you say, I'd like to know more about RIFs. So, just get on those search engines and have a look around and look at some information on RIFs, or come to one of our presentations about RIFs. We talk about RIFs fairly often, so that's good. And again, the idea is getting past that stigma. Talk about it, to ask questions around you. How you could have like a ladies' evening or a guys' evening and sit around and have a cup of tea and talk about finances or tools or apps or things that you've done to manage your own. So all about getting rid of that stigma. So start the conversation, share what you're doing, share your tools, your tips, find a money buddy for encouragement and support. This is probably particularly good if you're trying to save for some big thing like a wedding or a vacation or something. You could find a money buddy and maybe someone else who's invited to that wedding and say, okay, we need to get cracking and build up a little nest egg here for that. So again, share those resources that you're seeing today. Share anything that experiences you've had. If you had able to get like a big discount on your house insurance or something, or you found a garage who does really good work on your car, or you found an online bank that you get really good service from or something like that. Share those with others. And there's a whole list of the tools there. We could have a look at some of them if we have time later. And as I was saying, share your experiences. Talk about not just your good trades, but some of those bad experiences too, so that other people can share as well. I know I worked in trading for a while, and there's kind of this idiom that everybody talks about their good trades, but nobody talks about their bad trades. But that's how we all learn. So listen to others' experiences. You never know when you might learn something. I know when we have our ladies' nights, when we go, we'll go out to a show or something, and then we'll go have a cup of tea after. We often share things that we've been doing, complaining about the banks or things that we've found, or sharing information like that. And it's a very rich experiences. So everyone gets to learn when you do that, when you share your information. So here's a bit of a picture of the main kind of blocks that the FCAC mentions, and for each of these blocks there are whole sets of tools online and lots of information there. So of course, managing those expenses, that's definitely the big one, because that's the one we have the most control over. Managing debt, if you're in a situation where debt is a problem, there are strategies and there are tools and there are even companies to help you get that under control. Managing your savings, here we're talking about not just small projects or smaller projects like a trip to Europe or something, but we're also talking about retirement planning. Building your knowledge at the right time. An example of this, I have a friend in Denmark who told me that when you go to the bank in Denmark to, say, get a loan to buy a car, and cars are very expensive in Denmark, you have to prove to the bank that you understand the contract, and you have to prove to the bank that you can make the repayments before you can get a loan. So the banking system is kind of incorporated in this education process. So it becomes what's that buzzword? It becomes like a teaching moment when you go to get a loan for a car, or when you're doing something like that. Certainly for a mortgage, like you have to prove to them that you understand what you're signing and that you've done the calculations and you can make the repayments. Such a different culture from here, where banks tend to try to lend you more money than you need. So, a very different culture. So building your knowledge at the right time, if you do have a transaction that you have to do, a big transaction that comes up, like buying or selling a house, that's the time to get informed. Ask other people who've done the same thing. Ask your financial advisor or ask your financial institution, of course, but look for, also look for impartial information and make sure you know as much as you can when you have to make a big transaction like that. And navigating the financial marketplace, I'm sure we can all agree that it's very fast moving and there are many new products coming online all the time. Try to stay as informed as you can about those. Certainly if you have them in your portfolio, make sure you know what you're investing in. So let's look at some of this a bit in more detail. So that's just the same 5 ones in text. So managing expenses, and I think we did a presentation one time where we talked about this at length and got the audience involved with their own tips, and that was really great. So I'm just going to run through a few here. So again, none of this we can control. We cannot control inflation rates or interest rates or tax rates or the stock market returns, and we certainly can't control global events that are going on. But what we can control, at least to some extent, are our expenses. I mean, that's something that we can really target as a thing that we can control and try to manage. So if there are difficulties, or if you're doing your budgeting and you're finding that your income is running a little close to the bone for the expenses that you have, target those expenses. Is it really a necessity to have that Netflix subscription, or is it really a necessity to get a new iPhone every 2 years? I'm just throwing out examples, but some hard choices sometimes have to be made. The other slice of that is, if your income and expenses are running too close to the bone, are there ways where you can increase your income? And more, even people in retirement are finding that they're enjoying semi-retirement. I'm an example. I'm basically retired, but I'm still out there doing contracts and doing little things here and there. And I love the contact with people. I love keeping my head full of numbers and full of current events. So if that's a possibility for you, it's a great way to take some of that financial stress off, certainly in retirement. So again, we can't control most of these things, but we can control expenses. So in some of the financial press now, they're saying budget kind of become a nasty word. People hear budget and they zone out kind of thing. So I call it ins and outs. So basically, we all should have a pretty good idea of what's coming in, whether that's pension income from 3 or 4 different sources, or whether we have a salary coming in, or whether some people have rental income, or spousal assistance coming in, spousal, what do they call that now? Spousal support. People have all kinds of different sources of income, the child care benefits and all that things. You should have a pretty good idea of what's coming in versus what's going out. And most of the financial press or most of the advisors will say, pick a period. It could be just a month is maybe a bit short, but pick, say, a 3-month period. Even if you just write it down on a piece of paper. If you're more comfortable with something like Excel, use Excel. If you're more comfortable with the online apps, try that. But the idea is, what do I have coming in to my bank account versus what do I have going out? And we should all have a pretty good idea of where we're set up for that. And it's good to do it over a good period of time, because some expenses and income are not necessarily on a monthly basis. So make sure you're taking into account, for instance, annual property taxes or car insurance, maybe that you may pay once a year or every month. There are certain things that you pay monthly or quarterly. The idea is to get a good feeling for where do you stand, income versus expenses. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you have debt problems, or there's an unexpected event that comes up, like a wedding, and how expensive is even going to a wedding these days, or you have a major purchase, you have to replace a major appliance in the house, or you have to replace a vehicle. This is where a budget or an in and out document can help. It can help reduce that stress. If you know where you are with things, then you can know where do you need to target to change things. And that's, you know, you may say, well, that's easy to say, but if you really sit down and look at it, you may find that it's easier than you think to be able to, you know what, I'm just going to cancel that Videotron subscription. I don't really need that. I'm going to, you know, buy a secondhand phone this time. I'm not going to, you know, get the brand new one, which is very expensive. Things like that, to try to live within our means and make sure that we're covering off not only our current financial needs, but our future ones. So again, there's a link to a budget tool on the FCAC website. The AMF and all of those also have budget tools, and I have links to those later on. So this is, I took like a screenshot of the budget planner that's provided by the government of Quebec. So basically you can go on the website and you can key in your data, enter your data, your, you know, approximate income, your approximate expenses, and it'll give you in, you know, all these lovely bright colors. It'll give you pie charts and text and explain to you where your money is going, so you can really see. So what I did was I went in there and I just entered a bunch of numbers, and this is what it came up with. So it gives me a pie chart in the middle that tells me where does my money go. So the orange slice is for housing, so it tells me that I'm spending $1,380 a month in housing. On the left hand, ingoing, outgoing money, the overspending is the red bit, pardon me, the income is the green bit, and it'll tell me what are expenses and what are savings in the outgoings. So it's actually quite, I know most people like to see a visual, you know, looking at pages and pages of text, we tend to zone out, but this tool is quite interesting. So, but of course you'll need to have done a bit of background work to know what your expenses are and to know what your income is to be able to use the tools, but this is quite interesting. And it's one of many. So again, some managing expenses tips, and these are some that we came up with when we were doing presentations about managing money. So I just put them here, you can peruse them. Certainly bundles on the telecom plans, canceling subscriptions as I mentioned earlier. I have a tendency to subscribe to a lot of magazines because I'm a bit of a magazine junkie. So sometimes I have to like pull the plug and go, okay, I'm just not getting time to read that magazine, so I have to cancel that one. Insurance is another big one. I mean, insurance can be quite a significant expense for some of us, and by bundling things, sometimes you can get a deal. I know every year I call my insurance broker and I go, okay, what can you do for me to get this number down? Like I don't want my house insurance to go up by 30% this year. What can you do? And she will hunt around for me and find a better deal. So, you know, it takes a bit of effort, but it can be done. Banking fees. I always are a little surprised when people tell me what they're paying in banking fees, because most of the banks should be offering very generous packages, certainly for people over 65. If you feel comfortable with doing your banking online with an online bank, there are lots of my online banks that don't charge any fees at all. And so I'm a big fan of those as well. If you're a student, there are banks that will offer deals for students, or sometimes you can have a minimum deposit in the account and they'll waive the banking fees. So, I mean, if you're paying $15 or $20 or $30 a month for your banking fees, that's a lot of money. Like, that's something you can look into to try to see what you can change to get that down. I mean, much better in your pocket than in the bank's pockets, who are making $2 billion in profit every quarter, according to the latest numbers. So better in your pocket. Don't pay more banking fees than you need to. Sometimes there are member discounts if you are like in a professional association like engineering or nursing, perhaps teachers as well. I know a lot of them, if you're a member of a professional organization, you can get discounts on things like insurance in different places. University alumni is another one. I know McGill offers, has an alliance with TD Bank, so they offer some kind of a discount with insurance with TD Bank, and for different subscriptions as well, magazines and such. And then, of course, there's the Seniors' Day at Pharmaprix. Are we all aware of the Seniors' Day at Pharmaprix? And some other stores do that as well. Rona used to. I don't know if they still do. And some restaurants as well. They're trying to fill up their tables on slower nights. You can sometimes get quite good deals if you look at what the offerings are. And there are, of course, the loyalty points as well. The Pharmaprix Optimum, Pharmaprix called Shoppers Drug Mart in the rest of Canada, was purchased by Loblaws, which is Provigo in Quebec, but it's Loblaws everywhere else. So they have this Optimum Points program, which is quite well received in the financial press. And I think one of the other ones, Scene, is offered by Scotiabank, and I think they have an agreement with IGA, if I'm not, yep. And of course, Aeroplan, you know, I do a fair bit of flying, as you do, so I gather up my Aeroplan points as much as I can, and every once in a while I get a free ticket to Newfoundland for that. Metro has their own as well. You know, most of the big companies have these points plans. So managing debt. First of all, let's talk about good debt versus bad debt. So good debt is financing future improvement to your financial situation, and probably the most blatant example of that is education. Certainly investing in education to further or increase your income earning capacity later on is certainly probably the best example. But also a mortgage. A mortgage is not necessarily bad debt. It gives you a place to live. It's a forced savings program. You can hope for a capital gain in your while you have ownership of the property. So even though it's a huge debt for most of us, it's not bad debt because it's going to get you to a better place. Another example could be home improvements or renovations, depends on the renovation. But you could reduce your energy bills or you could increase your property value doing that. And borrowing for solid investments, in some cases, and I'm not a big proponent of this, but in some cases, borrowing to be able to make your RSP contribution can be an idea. It really depends. If you're having a high income year and you want to get your tax bill down in that particular year, it might be a good way to go. I'm not generally a proponent of it. So versus bad debt. So what are we talking about when we're talking about bad debt? Well, obviously it's any debt that has a very high interest rate on it. Credit cards, I'm looking at you. And a lot of these store cards, I guess we don't see these so much anymore, but the Bay and Sears and those kinds of stores used to have their own credit card. I don't know if Canadian Tire has their own credit card anymore. Those tend to have very high interest rates as well. Borrowing for risky investments. Oh my goodness. A friend of mine told me he was going to borrow $10,000 and invest in cannabis stocks when all that, you know, legislation was going on, and I just went, oh, no, no, you don't do that. So, and good thing he didn't, because then they all went down. So, and frivolous purchases, and who's not made a frivolous purchase with their credit card sometime, but you really need to keep that under wraps. That's where things get out of control, and there are lots and lots of stories online. Young people are a real target for it because they have not had the financial education and experience that we've had, and so, you know, that credit card debt, you really have to look out for that.
This is a Canadian Tire credit card.
Oh, so they do have a Canadian, okay. So,
Canadian Tire Financial Services is a bank.
Okay, all right. So it goes through a bank or it's their own?
They have a credit card, this one.
Okay, right.
And a savings account.
Oh, you can get a savings account as well. Okay, yep. I know Loblaws also has a banking service and credit card as well. Yep, so they're still out there. Thank you for that. So again, personal vehicles, I've heard people say, oh, I'm going to invest in a new vehicle this year. And I'm going, oh, no, 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 no. A vehicle is not an investment. It is a huge expense. So keep that in mind if you're buying vehicles. Huge expense. The latest gadget, I've had friends, particularly my Australian friends, oh, don't they love the gadgets? So the first generation that comes out, they'll spend the top price for the worst functioning one, and those costs can really add up. Unplanned expensive vacations. I must say, I haven't been much of a victim of that vice, but I guess some people do that. They just decide, oh, I'm going to go to Mexico for 2 weeks next week, and not look at the bottom line on it. So borrowing to buy Bitcoin, for instance, that would kind of set my hair on end. So what I'm trying to say here is there is debt, there's good debt, there's bad debt, and really, really, really keep an eye on those credit cards. Ideally, you pay off your credit card balance every month, and you never pay them any interest. They hate clients like that, but that's the type of client you want to be. Managing savings, I'm sure your financial advisor has talked to you about an emergency fund. We're in a time where the markets are volatile. We're in a time where there are, how do we call that? Natural disasters. I mean, we've been very fortunate here in Montreal, but elsewhere in Canada and all around the world, there have been fires, floods, earthquakes, hurricanes. I mean, we experienced a huge hurricane in Newfoundland only a couple of years ago. Hundreds of houses were lost. So you should really have somewhere stashed away. They recommend about 3 months worth of your fixed expenses. So that would be things like, mortgage, rent, utility bills, enough for groceries, enough for emergencies. And obviously you don't put that money in the stock market, you keep it somewhere very liquid, like in a cash account. Consider GICs for short or medium term savings. If you have a little packet of money and you don't need it for a year and you want to earn a bit of better interest, you can poke it away for a year or 2 years. I mean, the interest rates, we're in a falling interest rate environment at the moment, so the interest rates are not as great as they were. But rather than getting 0.2% in your savings account, a GIC today can still get you, maybe 3%. I think I saw some 3.5% with the online banks. The big banks, it'll be less, maybe 2 3/4. But if you have money that you just want to poke away for a year, or that you're not taking that trip to Italy until in 2 years' time, you can put away that money and earn a bit of interest on it. There's a website called Rate Hub that puts up the current rates of a lot of the different banks, including the online banks. So that's an interesting website to look at. RSPs in your high earning years, use those to maximize your tax savings, and use the TFSAs in your low earning years. And if you're in or near retirement, and we talk about this a lot, in January we usually do a presentation on TFSAs and RSPs, so I hope you'll come back for that and we can look at this in detail. Even maybe separate TFAs for different purposes. They can be TFSAs. I wish they would invent better acronyms for these things. So you could have one savings TFSA for one purpose and another one for a different purpose, because you would have different investments in them for different purposes. So skills, why is this important? As we were mentioning, growing complexity out there. There's so many choices, so many participants. So you want to make sure you're on top of what things are costing you, and can you get better deals. Know when you're buying a major purchase, or, you know, even when you're buying something like a coat, like, can I bring this back? Or what is the return policy, particularly if you're ordering things online? Protect against fraud. I think my advice here would be, if somebody phones you and you don't know who they are, and they say they're the bank, or they say they're the CRA, or just hang up and call the real number that you know. It's happened to me. I had my bank call me up and say, we want to talk to you about this, and I said, not talking to you. You may be the bank, you may not be the bank. I said, I'm going to hang up now and I'm going to call my bank. So then I got the real number, and don't call back any numbers that they give you. I called back the real number that was on my card, and it turned out that it was legitimate. But just don't talk to anyone on the phone who claims to be a bank or the CRA or anyone that asks you any personal information. Even if they ask you what your name is, that's when you hang up. Assistance with financial vulnerabilities. And I believe the library does lots of sessions on using electronic tools and that type of thing. So, or if you're not into that, you know, the old Excel spreadsheet or the old paper and pen will do as well. Just-in-time knowledge, I'll go through this quickly because we talked a bit about this. And remember the Denmark example. When you have a transaction that's happening, that's the time to really get informed on what you need to know to make a good decision. And I know I learned a lot about caulking and bricks and windows and things over the years, just from doing renovations to the houses. I did so much research trying to understand what these people were telling me. Oh, we're going to replace this, this, and this. And I'm like, oh, I want to know exactly what that means. So lots of research. Preparing your will, like know about estate planning and what the criteria are there. And again, the library does sessions on estates and wills and that type of thing on a regular basis. So there's that Denmark anecdote again. I won't go into that again. So life events we talked about. I'm going a little bit over time, I think. So these are some of the life events that can impact things. You may want to talk to your financial advisor if any of these things are happening. In some cases, you'll want to talk to your insurance broker or your insurance agent. Like if you do a major home improvement, sometimes you can get a decrease on your home insurance about that. If you replace a furnace or you replace something like that. So I've just put a list here now. Starting a first job, losing a job, a disability, a death, buying a home, selling a home. All these things can have quite large impacts on your financial life. So again, lots of tools here. I've included not just the FCAC tools, but the Ontario Securities Commission has a really great website called Get Smarter About Money, and I include it because it's mostly in English. I mean, obviously they won't have the nuances that we have in our Quebec thing, but there's lots of kind of general information there. It's all in English. The AMF, which is the Quebec Securities Commission, also has a website, and they also offer their information in English. So that's a great one to poke around in as well. Educator, actually there's a friend of mine who's involved in this. It's a group of people who work in the financial services, and they've set up a website trying to get education out there to the public. There isn't a lot there in English, but they do publish a guide to financial planning, I believe, which they do have an English copy of, and I believe we have copies of it downstairs even. So Educator is a good website. If you feel comfortable in French, it's mostly in French. Retraite Québec for all your questions about QPP and the government pension plans like REGOP. The CRA website is a wealth of information. You may have to pick through some of the blah blah, but you can go on there and search for any topic, and it will bring you up. You can even search by line number if you're looking at your tax return. and you are not quite understanding a particular line, you can go on the CR website, look for that line number, and it'll explain what that means. You can get copies of the tax returns and all the schedules, all those documents are there on the CRA website. And some of the banks as well do put out kind of public information. Sometimes they're white papers, sometimes they're little kind of blurbs and stuff. I find particularly the rbcwealthmanagement.com one, they put out a lot of different topics, and they explain things really well, and they generally take into account the differences that we see in Quebec, and that's called the Navigator. I think the series is called the Navigator. I hope they're still doing it. I didn't check yesterday, I should have checked. There are also videos online that PWL Capital does. They're a Montreal company as well. In fact, they're right here in Alexis Neon building. But they really have this great mandate for public education, and there are lots of videos out there. There are several, Peter Gay, I believe he's based here in Montreal. He does them in English and French. They have offices in Toronto and Ottawa as well, and Justin Bender is all over YouTube talking about more investing type topics. So there you go for that. There's a link for things that are particular to seniors. There's the Association of Défense des Droits oops, sorry, I banged my mic. That's mostly in French, I believe. And there's the FADOC also. I don't know if you know about the FADOC, but it's like the CARP. It's like a lobby group for retired people. So the Canadian equivalent is the CARP, and the American equivalent is the ARP. But the FADOC also had, that's one of the organizations that offers discounts. I know at one point I took a $30 membership to the FADOC, and I got like a $300 discount on my home insurance. So, you know, there are things like that as well that you can look into. And they organize activities for seniors and stuff as well. So here's a bunch of magazines. Okay, I think I'm to the end, because I think Lynn wanted to leave a little bit of time. So just a few things about here. Money Sense magazine. It's all online, it's all free, very simple language, easy to understand. The Globe and Mail, Rob Carrick recently retired, but there are lots of articles online. Some of them you may need a subscription to access. Canadian Money Saver is a pay-for subscription. I have a subscription to the, you know, being the magazine junkie, I have a subscription to Canadian Money Saver, and it's more kind of detailed technical information if you're into that. There's Zoomer magazine, the Gazette. Most of the major newspapers will have several financial journalists on hand. Jamie Golombek is a favorite of mine. He talks a lot about taxes. If you're looking in French, La Presse also has a personal finances section. And Boomer and Echo is another website that I like to check in on. And that's Rob Engen. I believe he's a certified financial planner out of Toronto or Ottawa, I don't remember. So those are some great publications you can look at. So thank you very much. And not a specific topic today, lots of websites to look at, lots of things to think about. So thank you for coming.